Welcome, everyone.
This is where they put my mic.
In behalf of the League of Women Voters, thank you for coming. I'm Judy Miller from Cornville, and I'll be your moderator this evening. I'd like to introduce Ruth Kiesel, only she's not here right now.
Lost my pen.
Ruth is our chairman of our Voter Service Committee, and she's just run on a quick errand. She'll be back quick. Mary Gassaway will be our timekeeper this evening. Robin Prudhomme-Bauer and Dick Kiesel and Ellie Bauer will be collecting and sorting questions a little later on. We are all members of the League of Women Voters of the Greater Verde Valley, and we are pleased to host this forum this evening. Community education and citizen participation are the primary goals of the League of Women Voters. The League does not come from a particular point of view or represent any one interest. We come as impartial, third-party helpers in the spirit of voter service. Now let's begin this evening's forum. First, we will hear opening statements from candidates vying for two-year terms in the Arizona State House of Representatives. There are 4 candidates running for 2 positions. This forum provides a great opportunity to learn more about each candidate, their aspirations, and their goals. The opening statements will be limited to 2 minutes. Next, the candidates will respond to 2 league questions that were provided to them in advance. The responses to those are limited to 3 minutes. Then we will take a short break to collect and sort your written questions. There will be 3x5 cards available to you, and our helpers will collect your questions at the time we break. Your questions may be directed to one or all of the candidates, and we ask that you avoid questions of a personal nature. They will be sorted by category and given to me. The candidates will be asked to limit their answers to 1 minute, and they may respond to a question asked of another candidate if they wish. After the question and answer period, I will ask each of the candidates to give 2-minute closing remarks, reversing the order of the opening statements. Our forum will adjourn at 8:30 p.m., after which you may want to meet the candidates personally. Our timekeeper will keep us on schedule. She has 3 signs: a 1-minute sign, a 30-second sign, and a stop sign. She will raise the 1-minute sign, then the 30-second to tell you how much time you have left. In order to provide the maximum amount of time for you to hear from all the candidates, we ask you to refrain from sounds of support or opposition to the discussion. Also, we request at this time that you silence your cell phones. The forum is being taped by Ryan Nichols of Yavapai Broadcasting. It will be available for viewing at www.verdevalleytv.com, and there it will be linked to the League of Women Voters website at www.lwvsedonaverdevalley.org. We request that if the broadcast is used, that it be played in its entirety. Yavapai Broadcasting tells me that cable TV channel 2 will probably run the forums a couple of times a week between now and November 6th. So you'll need to check your TV guides to know times. Are there any questions about the process we are following? Thank you. Now I will briefly introduce the candidates. Each is seeking a 2-year term in the Arizona State House of Representatives. We'll do this in alphabetical order for the moment. Doug Ballard from Parks, Angela Lefevre from Sedona, Bob Thorpe from Flagstaff, and our absent candidate is Brenda Barton from Safford. As soon as Ruth gets back, I'll have the statement that she sent for us to read, so we'll have a statement from Brenda. We have asked each candidate to introduce themselves and tell us their qualifications and reasons for running for office. They drew numbers to determine the speaking order, and our first candidate to speak will be Doug Ballard. 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, and I'd really like to thank the League and everyone who's here. A little bit about myself. My wife and I married 34 years. We live in Parks. We absolutely love Northern Arizona, and it's where we decided to live the rest of our lives. I'm retired after a long career in planning and economic development. I've worked with large companies, I've worked with international companies like Intel and Motorola. I've worked with small businesses. And one of the main reasons why I'm running is if you think of a vibrant economy anywhere in the world, anywhere, I don't think it matters where you pick, at its heart you'll find a strong educational system. Unfortunately, that's not what we have here in Arizona, and that's what we need to make a priority of. There's a second reason why I'm running. When I was approached by a number of different people of all political persuasions and asked to consider running, and they felt that there was a real imbalance in the legislature, and that there was some extreme bills that were coming forward that weren't really advancing the well-being of the people of this state. Bills restricting women's access to health care or birth control. A bill that, a state sovereignty bill, which calls for the state to seize federal lands, all of our national parks, our national forests, our national monuments, and it expressly contained in their language for the sale of these lands. And so people were very concerned about this, and ultimately, the more I looked into it, the more I became concerned. And so I did decide to run finally, and I'm honored to be endorsed by a wide array of people, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, who really want to see balance restored to the legislature. I'm very pleased and honored to be running with Angela Lefevre. Together we're the jobs team. We have a 5-point plan for the economic revitalization of northern Arizona, and it would be my deep honor to represent this district and to implement that plan.
Our second speaker is Angela Lefevre from Sedona.
Good evening. First of all, thanks to the League of Women Voters for putting this forum on, and also for all of you coming tonight. Thank you. I'm running because I believe that this great state of ours, Arizona, is headed in the wrong direction. I'm concerned. We need to work together to get things back on track. And I feel I'm someone who can do that, and I hope you feel so too. Somebody who can represent you the people. Yes, instead of wanting to control a woman's personal health decisions, offering our districts up as a site for nuclear waste dump, or allowing guns in schools, I will focus on what really matters. I'll focus on jobs and education. Yes, we've been together, we've known each other for quite a while, and we've been putting together our 5-point plan, which is a part of our jobs team ideas. This is not about taking over federal lands or waging war with the federal government, but working with the federal government to create healthy lands, healthy forests, and more jobs. Yes, let's bring jobs back to rural Arizona, jobs that pay well. And I have the personal experience to do the job myself. I have a degree in economics, and I know what it takes to make a small business work because I've owned one. I put one together, and hey, I was actually a job creator. I also worked for a Fortune 500 company for Quest Communications for 13 years. I was a senior manager, and I did extremely well. Education and jobs go hand in hand. We need an educated workforce, critical to bringing a new industry into this state. I spoke to somebody at Go Industries the other day. There are jobs going there, but they can't find the people who can do them. They're taking part of the company down to Maricopa County. We need to train our teachers. We need to invest in our kids. This is our future. And I hope I can be there and help make this happen. Thank you.
Bob Thorpe.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you to the League, and as well as thank you for coming out this evening. I truly appreciate this opportunity. I enjoy coming down to Verde Valley. I've been coming down here a lot lately. Matter of fact, this last week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So Verde Valley is a great place to visit, especially on cold Flagstaff days. I am a businessman, a constitutional author, a volunteer. Our community needed fire protection. I became a state-certified volunteer firefighter and did that for 7.5 years, as well as being an EMT. I've worked at such companies like Pricewaterhouse accounting firm, Walt Disney, the aerospace industry, the software industry. As a matter of fact, I even started my own software company. And then I was a UCLA instructor for about 7 years. I also have experience with K through 12 education, both as an employee as well as a volunteer. Definitely, there's things that we need to do here in Arizona. We need to get our jobs for working families. We need to encourage businesses to relocate here. And we need to build our economy back up, as well as our real estate market. There's a lot of work to be done. Fortunately, we've had a legislature. It isn't a kooky legislature as suggested, but instead, it's a legislature that balanced the budget the last 2 years, which is also mandated in our Constitution. They got $200 million back into education. $40 million into a third grade reading program. And last year, they were actually selected by the Capital Times as being one of the most business-friendly legislatures in generations. So I think our legislature has a very good track record, and it's a nonpartisan legislature with the bills that are passed there.
Thank you, and you'll notice that perfect timing. Ruth Kiesel arrived with an opening statement that was sent to us by Brenda Barton. Because of her schedule, she sent her regrets for not being here. But Brenda Barton is the 4th candidate running for State House of Representatives, and I'm pleased to read her statement now. Good evening, Verde Valley. I am State Representative Brenda Barton, and I would like to share some of the accomplishments we've made in the past 2 years. When I took office in early 2011, Arizona faced a $3.2 billion deficit and a structurally unsound budget. Today, after 2 years of hard work, our budget is balanced. We have a $450 million rainy day fund. We have produced a towering $427 million surplus, a monumental achievement, and our state's economy has risen to 4th in the nation. I am proud of these accomplishments. I am proud of fighting for rural Arizona against the powerful interests of Maricopa and Pima counties. I fought to include rural Arizona in the landmark jobs bill of 2010 that put rural Arizona on par with Maricopa and Pima counties for business attraction benefits. I refused to sign off on the 2011 and 2012 budgets until the larger counties assumed a larger share of the budget cuts that were so necessary as Arizona faced its worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. This greatly reduced the cuts that were made to rural counties, and yes, at the expense of those counties with larger economies able to absorb the budget impacts, but protecting rural Arizona. Since being elected 2 years ago, I have been focused on building a strong and vibrant state economy, creating the environment for businesses to prosper and jobs. My pro-economic and jobs record speaks through the various major business groups who have graciously endorsed me. These groups are mainstream, not extreme. My endorsements include groups such as the largest pro-business organization in the state, the Arizona Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and the Arizona chapter of the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the Arizona Cattlemen's Association, and the Arizona Farm Bureau. They have endorsed me because I have proven that I support what's good for Arizona, and I have fought for rural Arizona. Over the past 2 years, we've made the tough choices and taken the heat. We can look over the landscape and see what our work has brought, and I am committed to continuing that work until the job is done. Arizona deserves no less. I like to say my roots and boots are in rural Arizona. I am a 5th-generation Arizonan. My family arrived in the mountains of this district in the 1870s. I am rural Arizona. I will remain a defender of those ideals that made Arizona what it is today, remaining strong in the pursuit of continued accomplishments for this land I love so. I would like your vote on Election Day so that I may continue my service to you and to this beautiful state. Again, that's from Brenda Barton. Okay, we'll move on now to the questions that were provided to the speakers in advance. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Didn't fix that right. 3 minutes to respond. The first question, and I'll just start on this end. Okay?
Sure.
What do you think is the proper relationship between the state government and local governments and institutions?
Well, that's really a very good and I think fundamental question. Clearly, the state has an intimate relationship with counties, for example. Counties basically serve as arms of the state. And they're limited unless, except for the two metropolitan counties of Maricopa and Pima County, they're reliant on the state for their authorities. I think the proper relationship needs to be, and cities, of course, are home rule cities, who has and they have the ability to enact their own approaches toward how they want to develop. But the relationship needs to be one of partnership, and I don't think it has been one of partnership. What the state has done, and it is the obligation of the legislature to balance the budget, and that's a very, very serious obligation that we all have to take on, those who will be elected. But what the legislature did, if you talk to the League of Cities or you talk to the county associations, is they shifted a lot of their fiscal responsibilities to local government. They shifted a lot of burdens to taxpayers at the local level. When they cut HERF funds, for example, those are transportation funds, to counties and to cities, and used those funds instead to fund the Division of Motor Vehicles and other functions, that then left a huge hole for counties and cities relative to road maintenance and road construction. So either those things don't get done, or those local cities and towns and counties have to find other ways to raise those monies. They cut lottery revenues that would be used for transportation and also for general county assistance. And those revenues are provided by the state to help counties absorb and pay for some of the mandates that the state's asked them to do. They've shifted other costs and responsibilities to the county. And so clearly in a tough economic time, some of that stuff has to happen. But there should be dialogue and cooperation and coordination between all these levels of government. And I think that's very important. The other thing that concerns me, quite frankly, is the state has been taking back authorities from cities, for example. And one of the great things about local government, it's government at its most immediate and its most direct. And the state, when a special interest has an issue, maybe it's impact fees, where growth pays for itself, so it's not shifted to the property owner, or maybe it's some other issue, a special interest petitions the legislature, and they take those authorities away from cities and basically centralize government in the state. And I think that has been a mistake.
Angela, go ahead.
Well, I think probably we all agree on this, that what the proper relationship should be is one of cooperation. We serve the same constituency, right? So we should be based on good communications, sound legislation, and fair revenue sharing. And I think that's the key, and that's where everything kind of falls through. So right now what we have is a very unequal partnership, okay, where the state has used the counties, cities, and towns to balance its budget. It's been cutting and sweeping funds, unfortunately, funds like the HERF funds, okay, resulting in making arbitrary charges to the counties. Yavapai County had 1.7 million just taken away from its budget last year. Can you imagine if you're trying to run a budget, equalize your budget, how that would happen, what an impact that would have? It's also been passing what we call unfunded mandates. These are requiring counties to assume additional services without providing the money to do so. Such has been, for example, this whole problem with state mental hospital. There are these criminally mentally ill who get shipped down to the state mental hospital where they're required to obtain a restoration to competency, okay? That means they can stand trial. The state decided to raise these fees exponentially, have been huge amount. So Yavapai County decided, you know, this is really bad, we can't do this. They decided to set up their own program, which they did, and now Coconino County and other counties are using Yavapai County's program. So something did come of that, but it's the way this is done that is wrong. So basically what's been happening is that the budget is being balanced by taking funds away from the counties. And it's been very difficult for counties to be able to react. For instance, an example of this has also been like the county has a half-cent sales tax that has generated over $11 million that was given to the counties in the early 1990s to help pay for county programs. In the past 5 years, the state has required the county to assume the responsibility of providing additional services without providing the money to do so. So these are the kind of things that are a problem. The other things are some of the things that the state has done. For instance, rules and regulations that don't make sense, like restricting or allowing hunting to take place inside the city limits. Sedona did not really like that, the idea of having some kind of bears running around in the city, and you can go ahead and shoot them. The other ones that have happened, not allowing, some of the cities did not want to allow fireworks. They weren't allowed to do this. So I think the best thing is that the cities are given chances to be able to make their own decisions on things. Thank you.
Bob, go ahead.
Our system across the country is set up that you have hierarchies of government. And of course, when you're talking about the government that's closest to the people, that's the one that's typically the most effective. So federal government usually has a relationship with the states. States have a relationship, as Doug pointed out a moment ago, with the counties. And oftentimes the counties then have a relationship with the cities. So it's setting up that hierarchy. So in other words, if you're having a problem with your neighbor's dog barking, typically you won't be able to get President Obama on the line to express your concern. You would go to the local level. So local control is really important. And that's something that earlier this evening Chester Crandall was talking about, who's one of my running mates. The idea that we need to have less state mandates placed upon school boards, other organizations, other entities within city and county government. That instead, we need to be able to set up some very basic guidelines of outcomes that need to be achieved and allow the city, for example, the school boards, to be able to decide how to meet those outcomes. In the case of education, to make sure that our kids are actually educated. My opponents here in this race, they keep talking about all the terrible things that have happened over the last few years with regard to budgets and budget cuts. And some tough decisions had to be made. But this is a short-term situation. Our economy is actually coming back. The state is coming back. So in the future, if we have good leadership in our state, we're not going to see these kind of dramatic cuts, upheavals, if you will. But the old saying, desperate times demand desperate measures. One thing to keep in mind is, why did we have this fiscal nightmare? I don't know if any of you are aware of this, but the state no longer owns the actual buildings where our state government resides, where the legislature resides, where the Senate resides. It has a lot to do with our former governor, Janet Napolitano. And matter of fact, I think Tom Chabin was there on that watch as well. They were estimating, just as the recession was starting to really rear up and the winds were looking pretty bad, they were estimating 10% growth. Now, why would they do that? Even though their own economists were saying it's going to be more like 3 or 4% growth. They're doing that because they want to spend money. And it turns out they were spending money we did not have. And so we actually had to sell our state buildings in order to get enough money to meet our requirements for a balanced budget, which is typically unreasonable when you're talking about running a state government.
The second question provided by the League in advance was, in a time of budget constraints, what are the most important areas for the state to fund, either directly or through tax advantages? We can stick with the same order?
That's fine with me if you want.
All right.
Okay.
If you're comfortable.
Well, you know, if we're serious about building a sustainable economy, then we have to be serious about education. We suffer from a boom-bust cycle, and we have for years. When times are good, we're doing pretty good. And of course, that's when we should be setting money aside for the rainy day fund. But when times are bad, Arizona really goes in the tank. And it's because we're so dependent upon construction jobs and jobs associated with growth, because we've been a net importer of people. People have come to Arizona. But if we're serious about building a sustainable economy, then we have to be serious about education. We spend less than every other state in the nation on our schools. We're 45th in the nation in terms of science proficiency, measured at the 8th grade level, which is a benchmark. We don't have a future, a sustainable future. We're not going to be able to attract high-quality jobs until we can address education in a positive way. Our goal should be to have a world-class educational system. You know, I think in Brenda Barton's statement, she talked about us being fourth in the nation from an economic perspective. That's driven largely by temporary construction jobs. And that's largely due to the Intel plant that's currently under construction now in Chandler. That's the biggest thing that's happening right now. So what we need, instead of come and go construction jobs, is we need to build the basic infrastructure to have a solid economic future. There really is no other option. Our reading proficiency, we're well below the national average on reading proficiency. So we're paying the cost of the $3 billion that's been cut from public education since 2008. To make matters worse, in my opinion, we spend more by a wide margin than every other state in the nation on our prison systems. Every other state we spend more. Independent studies, state studies have shown that our approach toward prisons is costing us millions every year, where we could be running those prisons more efficiently. We have a fundamental need for tax reform in this state. Independent study after independent study has shown that we have a tax structure that's full of special exemption loopholes, some of which go back all the way to 1912. You know, maybe they made sense in 1912, but I would argue they don't make much sense now. And so I think when you look at balancing the budget, you've got to look at both sides of the equation. And we need a taxing structure that will support us and an educational system that will support us into a knowledge-based economy of the future. Otherwise, we're destined to continue on this boom-bust cycle.
Yes, balancing the budget, that has got a lot to do with this. But first, before I go into that, yes, absolutely. I think what we have to do is look at the cuts that have been made, okay, which have been so cruel because they've hit our children and our grandchildren. They've hit the people most vulnerable. I'll take education. We've seen the cuts that have happened, and we know that per capita, Arizona is #1 in how in-depth these cuts have been made to each student. That's a terrible #1, isn't it? We should be investing in our kids. We should be investing in our teachers. We have lost 7,000 teacher jobs since 2009. I've been a teacher. I know how tough it is to teach a class of 35 kids, believe you me. That's what these teachers have to do day in and day out. That's not education. This is not right. We have to invest in the salaries of our teachers. Do you know how much a teacher begins when they first start, how much they get here in Arizona? $28,000 a year. Is that a good wage for a teacher? You should hear the folks like Russell Pierce talk about teachers down in the Capitol. They made it a crime almost to be a teacher, lost respect in what a high quality of a job that is. I respect teachers. Teachers shouldn't have to go out and buy what they need in their classes, their supplies, which is what they're doing now because there's no money there for them. So let's put money into education, for heaven's sake, where it counts. And that's in the classrooms, and that's in teachers' salaries. Let's respect our teachers. Let's train them well. Okay, that was my first thing. The other thing is healthcare. We froze Access. Access was one of the best programs in the country. We froze it. We froze thousands of adults who have no kids. We froze them out of coverage. We froze children out of coverage. These kids didn't have any alternatives, so what do they do when they're ill? They get yanked to the emergency room. The most expensive type of healthcare you can imagine. And who pays for it? You and I pay for it because we pay higher insurance costs. That's not the way to do it. We need to ensure, number one, we have a good preventative care system where kids and families learn how to keep healthy. And you can do that, believe you me. You can do that. You can also invest in our healthcare, which guess what? More jobs, more healthy people can work. That brings more money into the system. Also our healthcare industry, my gosh, Cottonwood, let's face it. Cottonwood, Flagstaff, this is where a lot of the jobs are in healthcare. We need to invest in our healthcare. Thank you.
Angela, you'll have to tell me afterwards. At one of our meetings, you told us teachers started at 28,000. Another meeting, you said 30,000. I haven't actually looked it up. All I know is they're making about anywhere between 4,000 and 6,000 more than a legislator makes. So it's not a bad starting wage. I do need to correct you, Angela. The last time we got together, you told us that 300,000 kids had been removed from the Access program. No, that's what you told us last time. And actually, they had to put a cap on Access because of budget constraints. And so what ended up happening is there were childless adults that were eliminated for the program, unfortunately. But that was just one of the problems that we had when trying to get our fiscal house in order. Education is actually very important. I guess one of the questions that each of you need to ask is what is appropriate amount of money for education? Is it $100,000 a year? Is it $200,000 a year? Is it $500,000 a year per child? Is what I'm referring to. How much can we spend? I mean, right now it's the total spent on each child is about $9,200. Would I wish that we had more money? Absolutely, but please also understand. At $9,200 per year, how much does it cost to educate one of our kids? $120,000. So what does the state do as far as their portion that they're adding to education? 53 cents out of every dollar that the state collects goes into education. In comparison, New York is 49% of their state budget actually goes towards education. What we have seen over the last few years is as we've made cuts, and actually the cuts that have been made to education have actually only impacted things outside of the classroom. So the money that it's making into the classroom has not changed during this horrible recession that we've been going through. And surprisingly, the student scores have not changed as well. I don't know if you've noticed, but think back to 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago. This is a general theme that anytime a Democrat is talking about issues, one of them is always going to be education. We're not spending enough on education. So there are places in our country that will, the property taxes are up around $12,000, $14,000, $18,000, that a lot of it goes into education. We could do that here in Arizona. I don't know if anyone in this room, if you want to stand up and kind of wave your hand, if you'd like to double, triple, or quadruple your property tax. Please. And please, the next time you have an opportunity, write that bigger number on the check. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to take a 10-minute break to collect questions from the audience. So it's the audience's turn now to get busy. Put your questions on the 3x5 cards and we'll sort them. And we'll convene again in 10 minutes, about 20 till.